A billionaire watched Maid's daughter feed his disabled child. The outcome changed her life. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get into today's story. Imagine being in a mansion, surrounded by opulence, crystal chandeliers hanging from the ceiling, marble floors shining under the soft glow of golden lights, and a view of the city so vast it almost seems unreal. Yet, in the midst of all this wealth, there's a feeling of emptiness. A loneliness that doesn't come from being alone, but from a lack of connection. This is the world of billionaire businessman Charles Thompson. With a fortune that seemed to grow daily, Charles had everything anyone could dream of: an expansive home, luxury cars, fine clothing, and a powerful reputation. But there was one thing he didn't have: happiness. His relationships were hollow, particularly with his family. His wife, Clara, had become more of a companion than a partner, and his children were often more interested in their own lives than in the one their father provided. But there was one person who still held a place in his home: Maria, his housekeeper. Maria had been with the family for years, and though she wasn't part of the elite social circles Charles moved in, she was the one person who seemed to genuinely care for his family. Her daughter, Lily, often came to the mansion after school to visit her mother. Lily, at just 11 years old, had a presence that stood out even in the quiet corners of the mansion. She was always kind, always observant, and somehow, in a way Charles could never explain, she made the house feel a little warmer. Today, however, was different. As Charles sat in his study, he overheard a conversation between Maria and Lily in the kitchen. The sound of Maria's soft voice mixed with Lily's laughter as they prepared a meal. But then, there was something else, something that caught Charles's attention. He heard Lily talking about her disabled brother, and how she had learned to take care of him in ways that even the doctors couldn't fully explain. Intrigued, Charles couldn't help but watch as the two of them worked together to make lunch for the family. He watched as Maria placed a plate of food in front of his son, Jake, who had been born with a condition that limited his mobility. Lily gently helped Jake eat, her small hands moving carefully as she fed him. Charles watched, captivated by the tenderness in her actions, the way she seemed to understand his son's needs without him having to say a word. At that moment, something shifted inside Charles. He realized that he had been so focused on his wealth, his business, and his public image that he had forgotten what truly mattered: the people who cared for him, and the ones who needed care in return. The sight of Lily, so selfless and full of grace, touched him in a way he couldn't describe. He had spent years trying to build an empire, but here was a young girl, without wealth or power, changing the life of his own son in ways he never could have imagined. It was a moment of clarity, a reminder that true greatness isn't found in money or status, but in the kindness and love we show to others. But what Charles didn't know was that this moment would lead to a transformation, not just for his son, but for him as well. Stay tuned for what happened next. As Charles sat in his study, lost in thought, he could not shake the image of Lily feeding his son Jake. It was a simple, yet profound moment. It had been so long since he had seen anyone care for Jake with such patience and tenderness. He had grown accustomed to the sterile environment of doctors and therapists, but what Lily showed him was something different. It was the kind of care that money could not buy. As he looked out the window, his thoughts swirled. Charles had always thought that wealth could solve all of life's problems. But here was a young girl, without wealth, yet she was solving problems in a way that no amount of money could. He was suddenly reminded of a conversation he once had with his father, a man who had built his empire from the ground up. Money is power, his father had said, but it is only power if you know how to use it. But in this moment, Charles realized that power wasn't the same as strength. Lily, in her quiet way, had shown him the true strength of the human spirit. He had seen it in the way she cared for Jake, in the way she seemed to understand his needs without ever asking for anything in return. For the first time in years, Charles felt the weight of his own success in a different way. He had everything he thought he ever wanted, but there was a hole in his heart that money couldn't fill. As he left his study and headed downstairs, he was greeted by Maria, who was preparing dinner. He watched her as she worked, moving gracefully around the kitchen. Maria had always been a constant in his life, and yet, like Lily, he had never truly seen her for who she was. He had always taken her for granted, assuming that she was just part of the background of his life. But now, everything had changed. When he walked into the living room, Jake was sitting in his usual spot by the fireplace, his legs stretched out in front of him. Lily sat beside him, reading him a story. Charles stood in the doorway, watching them for a moment before he stepped inside. "How's he doing today?" Charles asked, his voice softer than usual. Maria turned to him, a surprised look on her face. "He's doing well. Lily has been helping him with his exercises, and she's been keeping him calm." Charles nodded, his eyes lingering on Lily as she continued to read. "She's something else, isn't she?" he said quietly. Maria smiled, a small but genuine smile. "Yes, she is. She has a way of making him feel safe, something we've all been trying to do for so long." Charles was silent for a moment, taking in her words. Then, without thinking, he said, "I want to help her. I want to do something for her, for all she's done for my family." Maria looked at him, her expression unreadable. "You already do, sir," she said. "But I think what Lily needs more than anything is for people to see her for who she is. Not just the maid's daughter, but someone with real value." Charles stood there for a moment, contemplating her words. For the first time in a long while, he understood what she meant. It wasn't about money. It was about recognition. It was about seeing people for the worth they had, not for their status or their bank account. "I'll make sure she's recognized," he said, his voice firm. "I'll make sure everyone knows just how special she is." And in that moment, Charles realized that his life, his family, had been changed. It wasn't by the wealth he had amassed or the power he wielded, but by a young girl who had shown him the true meaning of strength and love. As he walked away from the room, he knew that things would never be the same. His heart had been opened to something new, something deeper than money or power, and for the first time in years, he felt truly alive. I woke up the next morning with a new perspective. Charles couldn't stop thinking about the promise he had made to Maria and Lily the night before. His mind was still processing everything that had happened, and he couldn't help but feel a deep sense of responsibility for the young girl who had changed his outlook on life. He had spent so many years trying to control every aspect of his life, but now he realized there were things far beyond his control, things like love, kindness, and the extraordinary strength that comes from people like Lily. As the morning sun streamed through the windows of his grand mansion, Charles sat in his study, reflecting on the importance of the promise he had made. He knew he had to keep it, but the real question was how. How could he, a man who had everything, provide Lily with something that would truly make a difference in her life? The answer wasn't as simple as giving her money or buying her gifts. It wasn't about wealth or power. It was about giving her the recognition and opportunities she deserved. He had the resources, the influence, and the platform to make it happen, but first, he needed to understand her more. Maria had always kept her personal life private, but Charles realized that by being so disconnected, he had never truly gotten to know her, or her daughter. He knew it was time for a change. That evening, Charles arranged a dinner at the mansion. It would be small, intimate, and with a purpose. He invited Maria, Lily, and his family. When they arrived, the mansion felt different. It wasn't just the grand decor or the expensive furniture that made it special, but the people who were about to sit around the table. Charles wanted this evening to be a celebration, a recognition of the people who had been a part of his life without him even realizing it. As they sat down to dinner, Charles couldn't help but feel the weight of the moment. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about business or his wealth. He was thinking about the relationships that mattered. The conversations flowed, but Charles could see Lily sitting quietly at the table, her eyes focused on the conversation but her thoughts somewhere else. He could tell she wasn't used to being in a setting like this. The luxurious surroundings didn't seem to faze her, but there was a certain discomfort in her demeanor. As the evening wore on, Charles decided it was time to speak up. He raised his glass and looked around at the people in the room. "Tonight is about recognizing the people who make this house a home," Charles began, his voice steady and sincere. "Maria, you've been with us for years, and your hard work and dedication have made this house what it is today. And Lily," he paused, his gaze shifting to the young girl, "you've shown us all what it means to give without expecting anything in return. Your kindness, your strength, and your heart have touched me in a way I can't even describe." Lily looked up, surprised by his words. Charles could see the doubt in her eyes, the uncertainty of someone who had never been truly seen before. "I want you to know," he continued, "that you are not just the maid's daughter. You are someone with incredible value, someone who deserves to be recognized and given the opportunities you've earned. I promise you that I will do everything in my power to ensure you have every opportunity to succeed and achieve your dreams." Lily's eyes widened, and for the first time, she smiled, a smile that lit up her face. It was a smile of disbelief, of hope, and of gratitude. Maria, sitting beside her daughter, fought back. Tears. She had always known that Lily was something special, but to hear these words from Charles, the man who had always been so distant, was more than she could have imagined. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. There was laughter, there were heartfelt conversations, and for the first time in years, Charles felt truly at peace. He had finally realized that the true measure of a person isn't found in their bank account or their job title. It's found in their heart, in their kindness, and in the way they treat others. As the night drew to a close, Charles knew that this was just the beginning. He had taken the first step in changing not only Lily's life, but his own as well. And as they all said their goodbyes and left the mansion that night, Charles made a promise to himself. He would never again take the people around him for granted. They were the ones who mattered the most. The days that followed the dinner felt different for Charles. He had made a promise to Lily, but he soon realized that keeping that promise wasn't as simple as offering opportunities or giving her material things. It was about truly changing his perspective and making sure he never lost sight of the things that mattered most. The mansion no longer felt like a place of isolation. There was a new energy in the air. For the first time in years, Charles was home, not just physically, but emotionally as well. He began spending more time with his family, taking an active role in his children's lives, and engaging more with Maria, who had always been a quiet but constant presence in the household. It wasn't just about providing for them anymore. It was about connecting with them on a deeper level. Lily, in particular, became a focus of his attention. He made it a point to check in with her regularly, asking about her dreams and goals, trying to understand what motivated her. One evening, he invited her to his study, a gesture that surprised her. She had never been asked to join him there before, and the thought of being alone with Charles, the billionaire, made her nervous. But when she sat down, she realized that he wasn't there to discuss business or wealth. He was there to listen. "Lily," he began, "I know I've made a lot of mistakes in the past, and I've failed to see the people around me for who they truly are. But I want you to know that I see you now. You are more than just the maid's daughter. You have something special, something the world needs to see." Lily was quiet for a moment, unsure how to respond. She had never been told anything like that before. "I want to help you," Charles continued. "I'm not just talking about giving you money. I'm talking about giving you the tools and the support to make your dreams a reality. You've already shown so much strength and resilience. I want to make sure you have the chance to reach your potential." Lily felt a wave of emotion wash over her. She had always dreamed of becoming a doctor, but she knew it was a far-off dream. With her family's limited means, she had never really thought it would be possible. But here, in front of her, was a man who was offering her not just words, but the means to make it happen. Over the next few months, Charles followed through on his promise. He arranged for Lily to attend one of the best schools in the country, covering all her expenses, including tutoring and extracurricular activities. He also introduced her to mentors in the medical field who could help guide her as she pursued her dreams. But Charles didn't stop there. He took a more active role in his own family's affairs, realizing that his wealth and power could be used for good, to help people like Lily who had so much potential but lacked the resources to realize it. Maria, too, was given the opportunity to pursue her own dreams. Charles offered to send her back to school, something she had always dreamed of but never thought possible. With the financial support and guidance from Charles, Maria was able to finally take the first steps toward a better future. As the months went by, Charles's life began to change in ways he had never expected. He became more involved in charity work, focusing on creating opportunities for people who had been overlooked by society. He started to understand that the real value of life wasn't in what you could accumulate, but in what you could give to others. One evening, as he sat in his study, looking out over the city, Charles thought back to the moment when Lily had first fed Jake. It seemed like a lifetime ago. But that moment had sparked something inside him, something that had led him on a journey of self-discovery and personal transformation. He knew that he would never be the same again. He had learned that true success wasn't about money or power. It was about the relationships you built, the lives you touched, and the difference you made in the world. Charles smiled to himself, a contented smile, knowing that he had found something far more valuable than all the wealth he had ever accumulated. As the months passed, Charles watched Lily transform. She had settled into her new school, and the change in her was palpable. Her once timid demeanor had turned into a quiet confidence. She no longer looked out of place among her peers. Her academic achievements spoke for themselves, and she quickly became a standout student in the medical program. Charles, too, noticed a shift in himself. He was no longer the distant billionaire, caught up in his empire. He now saw the world in a different light, understanding the importance of nurturing potential and fostering opportunities for others. He had gone from someone who believed his wealth could buy everything to a man who realized that wealth could only go so far. The true value lay in the people you helped, the lives you touched, and the lasting impact you made. One evening, as Charles sat in his office reviewing some business papers, he got a call from Lily's school. It was her academic advisor, who wanted to discuss a breakthrough in Lily's studies. The advisor spoke with a mix of pride and excitement, explaining how Lily had excelled in a recent medical research project, one that had caught the attention of the university's top medical faculty. "We believe she's ready for an internship at a leading hospital," the advisor said. "This could be a big step toward her future in medicine." Charles smiled, feeling an overwhelming sense of pride for the young girl who had defied the odds. He was there when Lily had first walked into the mansion, unsure of herself, unsure of her future. Now, she was on the verge of something incredible. He immediately arranged for her to meet with the hospital's board, ensuring that she had every opportunity to pursue her passion for medicine. But this was just the beginning. Over the next few weeks, Charles continued to mentor Lily, guiding her through decisions about her future, introducing her to influential figures in the medical community, and ensuring she had access to the best resources available. He watched as her dream of becoming a doctor began to materialize. Meanwhile, Maria's life was also changing. With Charles's support, she was able to complete her studies, earning a degree in business management. Maria had always been a hardworking woman, but now she had the knowledge and confidence to pursue her own ambitions. She took on a leadership role at a local nonprofit organization dedicated to helping underprivileged children gain access to education and healthcare. As Charles stood beside her at her graduation ceremony, he couldn't help but feel a deep sense of fulfillment. In helping others, he had found a purpose that went far beyond the walls of his business empire. He had created a ripple effect, where one act of kindness had sparked a chain of events that changed not only Lily's life, but Maria's and his own as well. The once cold, lonely mansion now felt like a home, a place where love, support, and dreams flourished. The change in Charles was profound. His life was no longer defined by his wealth or power, but by the legacy he was building, a legacy of empowerment, of lifting others up, and of making the world a better place, one person at a time. He realized that true success isn't measured by the zeros in a bank account, but by the lives touched, the hearts healed, and the opportunities given. As the years went by, Charles continued to support Lily and Maria, watching them both flourish in their respective careers. And in the quiet moments, when he sat back and reflected on everything that had happened, he realized that the greatest gift he had ever received wasn't wealth or recognition. It was the chance to make a difference, to change lives, and to see the incredible potential in others. And with that, Charles knew that his journey was far from over. It had only just begun. The transformation in Charles's life was evident. His commitment to helping others, especially Lily and Maria, had given him a sense of purpose that he had never known before. As the months passed, Lily's success in the medical field continued to grow. She had completed her internship at the hospital with flying colors, earning recognition from the doctors and patients she worked with. She was on track to graduate at the top of her class, and it was clear that her future was bright. But what truly moved Charles was the way Lily carried herself. She was no longer the shy, quiet girl who had once been uncertain of her place in the world. She had grown into a confident, determined young woman who was ready to take on the world. Her resilience and compassion were an inspiration, not just to Charles, but to everyone who knew her. Maria, too, was thriving. With her degree in business management, she had been promoted to a senior role at the nonprofit organization she worked for. Her impact on the community was undeniable, and Charles often found himself in awe of her strength and perseverance. She had gone from being a humble housekeeper to becoming a leader who was making a difference in the lives of countless children. As Charles watched these two women succeed, he couldn't help but reflect on his own journey. He had spent so much of his life focused on acquiring wealth and power, but now he realized that true success was measured by the difference you made in the lives of others. His wealth, which he had once seen as the ultimate achievement, now seemed secondary to the meaningful relationships and positive change he had created. One day, as Charles walked through the nonprofit organization that Maria had helped build, he stopped to speak with some of the children who had benefited from the programs. It was a humbling experience, seeing firsthand the impact of the work they were doing. The children spoke about their dreams of becoming doctors, teachers, engineers, and artists. They had hope, something they had never had before. And it was all because of the efforts of people like Maria and Lily, who had shown them what was possible. Charles realized that this was the real legacy he wanted to leave behind. Not just a successful business empire, but a world where people had the opportunity to succeed, regardless of their background or circumstances. That evening, as he sat in his study reflecting on the journey he had taken, Charles received a letter from Lily. It was a simple note, but it brought tears to his eyes. "Thank you for believing in me," the letter read. "You gave me the chance to chase my dreams. I will never forget what you did for me, and I promise I will pay it forward." In that moment, Charles understood that everything he had done, every decision, every action, had been worth it. The wealth he had accumulated could never compare to the fulfillment he felt now, knowing that he had made a lasting impact on the lives of others. As he looked out the window at the city below, Charles smiled. He knew that the future was full of endless possibilities. And with the lessons he had learned along the way, he was ready to face whatever came next. He had found his true purpose, and it was bigger than anything money could ever buy. Months went by, and Charles couldn't shake the feeling that the changes in his life had only just begun. Lily had continued to excel, and her future as a doctor seemed more certain with each passing day. As she neared graduation, Charles couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. Not just because of her academic success, but because he had played a part in giving her the chance to reach her dreams. It was a feeling he had never experienced before, a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing he had helped someone who truly deserved it. He had changed Lily's life, but in return, she had changed his. Charles's business empire was thriving, but it no longer consumed him the way it once had. He now focused on building deeper connections with the people around him, especially with his own family. He began spending more time with his children, not just as their father, but as someone who genuinely wanted to be a part of their lives. For the first time in years, he found himself attending their school events, sitting down to dinner with them without checking his phone, and truly listening to their hopes and dreams. It was in these moments that Charles realized something profound. True wealth wasn't just about money. It was about the relationships you nurtured and the lives you impacted. One day, as he sat in the living room, his daughter Sarah approached him. She had always been quiet and reserved, but lately, she had been more open, and Charles could see the change in her. "Dad," she said, sitting beside him, "I've been thinking about what I want to do after college. I don't want to just follow in your footsteps or live up to some expectation. I want to make a difference, just like you've taught me." Charles smiled, his heart swelling with pride. He had always known his children were capable of greatness. But hearing Sarah express her desire to contribute to the world in her own way filled him with joy. It was a moment of clarity. He had done the right thing, not just for Lily, but for his own children as well. He had taught them that success wasn't measured by wealth or status, but by how much you gave back to the world. That evening, Charles sat with Maria in the kitchen, the two of them enjoying a quiet conversation over coffee. "I never imagined this life," Maria said, her voice filled with gratitude. "I never thought I would see my daughter go to school, let alone have the chance to make a real impact. And now here we are. It's all because of you, Charles." Charles looked at her, his heart heavy with emotion. "It's not just me," he said softly. "You did this. You gave everything for Lily, and you've been there every step of the way. I just helped open the door. Maria smiled, but Charles could see the deep pride in her eyes. She had worked hard for everything she had, and now her dreams were becoming a reality. Charles knew that the lessons he had learned from Lily and Maria were lessons he would carry with him for the rest of his life. The wealth he had accumulated no longer seemed important. What mattered now was the legacy he would leave behind. Not a legacy of business achievements or financial success, but a legacy of compassion, generosity, and love. As the sun set over the horizon, Charles felt a deep sense of peace. His life had come full circle. He had been given the opportunity to make a difference in the world, and he had taken it. And in doing so, he had created a family, a community, and a future filled with hope. It was a future that he knew would continue to thrive long after he was gone, a future that would carry on the lessons of kindness, integrity, and the importance of seeing people for who they truly were. As the years went by, Charles's transformation became even more apparent. What had started as a promise to help Lily and Maria evolve into a much deeper journey. It was no longer just about providing opportunities or financial support. It was about creating lasting change, both within his own family and within the community at large. Charles had always thought of himself as a businessman, but now he was learning what it truly meant to be a leader. His relationship with Lily continued to flourish. She had become not just a successful student, but a beacon of hope for others who dreamed of achieving what seemed impossible. The hospital internship she had once embarked on was now just a stepping stone toward her medical career. By the time she graduated, she was already being considered for a prestigious position at one of the top medical research facilities in the country. Charles stood by her side through every step, not just as a mentor, but as someone who deeply admired her passion and resilience. As Lily's career took off, Charles made it a point to continue supporting others in her position. He funded scholarships for young people from underprivileged backgrounds, ensuring that they, too, could pursue their dreams without being held back by financial limitations. Meanwhile, Maria had taken on a leadership role at a nonprofit organization that provided education and healthcare to children in need. She was now not only helping to run the organization, but also mentoring young women who had once been in her shoes. It was a full-circle moment. Charles could see the impact they were both making, and it filled him with a sense of pride that he could not have imagined years ago. His life was no longer defined by the wealth he had accumulated or the power he had once craved. It was defined by the people he had helped, the lives he had touched, and the lasting legacy he was creating. One evening, as he sat in his office reflecting on everything that had changed, Charles received a call from an old business partner. The partner, who had been with him during the early days of his career, was offering a new business venture, an opportunity to expand his empire in a way that could bring in millions more. But as Charles listened to the pitch, he felt a strange sense of indifference. He realized that what had once been so important to him no longer held the same appeal. His wealth, his business empire, it was all secondary now. What mattered was the difference he could make in the world. He politely declined the offer, thanking his partner for thinking of him. As he hung up the phone, he realized that the path he was on was not one of financial growth, but of personal fulfillment. Over the following months, Charles began to shift his focus. He reduced his involvement in the daily operations of his business, allowing his trusted team to take over, while he dedicated more of his time to community work. He continued to support Lily and Maria, of course, but he also wanted to give back to others who were in need. He became a regular volunteer at local shelters, donated to causes he believed in, and began working with other philanthropists to build programs that could make a lasting difference. The mansion that once seemed so empty now felt alive with purpose. It wasn't just a place to sleep, but a hub for ideas and dreams, where conversations about changing the world took place daily. Charles had finally found his true purpose. He had spent so many years building an empire, but now, he was building something far more meaningful, a legacy of kindness, generosity, and love. As he looked around at the life he had created, Charles realized that success had nothing to do with the things you own, but with the people you help and the hearts you touch. He knew that this journey was just beginning, and that his story would continue to unfold in ways he never could have imagined. But no matter where it took him, he would always carry with him the lessons he had learned from Lily, Maria, and the countless others who had inspired him along the way. Years later, Charles sat on the balcony of his now not-so-empty mansion, looking out at the city skyline. His life had taken a turn that he could have never predicted. It had started with a simple decision to help Lily and Maria, to offer them the opportunities that would have been impossible without him. But along the way, he had learned so much more than he had ever expected. His empire had grown, but not in the way it once had. It had expanded into the realm of human connection, of impact, and of making a difference in the lives of those who mattered most. Lily had gone on to become one of the youngest doctors in her field, earning a reputation not just for her intellect, but for her compassion. She had built a successful career and now worked with underprivileged communities, offering medical care to those who couldn't afford it. Her dream had become a reality, not just because of her hard work, but because she had been given a chance she would have never had without the support of Charles. Maria, too, had flourished. With her degree and newfound leadership role, she had become an advocate for change. She worked tirelessly to ensure that children in need had access to quality education, and her work had earned her recognition from organizations around the world. Maria was now a beacon of hope for many, showing them that it was possible to rise above circumstances and build a better life. For Charles, seeing both of them succeed in such remarkable ways filled him with an indescribable sense of pride. He had helped them reach their goals, but it was their hard work, dedication, and resilience that had made them extraordinary. And in their success, he had found his own. He had come to realize that wealth and power were fleeting, but the impact you leave on the world lasts forever. Charles had spent so many years pursuing success in the traditional sense, but now he understood that the true measure of a life well lived was in the difference you make in the lives of others. As he continued to support Lily, Maria, and countless others who were working to make the world a better place, he found peace in knowing that his legacy would be one of compassion and selflessness. He had created something far more meaningful than money or status. He had created a ripple effect that would continue to touch lives for generations. It wasn't just about the wealth he had built, but about the relationships he had nurtured, the people he had helped, and the lessons he had learned along the way. The mansion, that once felt so empty, now seemed full of love, hope, and the knowledge that the future was bright. As Charles looked out over the city, he realized that his journey was far from over. There was still much to be done, many more lives to touch, and countless opportunities to create change. But for the first time in his life, he felt at peace, knowing that he had finally found the true purpose of his existence. And as the sun set behind the skyline, Charles smiled to himself, grateful for the path he had chosen, and the legacy that would continue to grow long after he was gone. In this inspiring story of transformation, a successful millionaire opens his heart and life to help a young girl and her mother, changing not just their futures, but his own as well. This millionaire story shows how true wealth is not measured in money, but in the lives you impact and the legacy you leave behind. From offering opportunities to a young girl who dreams of becoming a doctor, to helping a hardworking mother achieve her own goals, this millionaire story is a testament to the power of kindness, support, and selflessness. As the story unfolds, we see how these acts of generosity spark a ripple effect, creating a brighter future for everyone involved. This millionaire story reminds us that success is not just about what you have, but what you give to others. Through the ups and downs, the millionaire learns that real fulfillment comes not from wealth, but from the difference you make in others' lives. With every step, this millionaire story becomes a powerful reminder that a legacy built on compassion and love lasts far longer than any material possession. The transformation of Lily and Maria is just one of many examples of how one decision can change the course of someone's life. If you're looking for inspiring millionaire stories that go beyond the usual riches to fame tale, this is the story for you. These millionaire stories show us that with the right mindset, anyone can make a lasting impact on the world around them.